My name is Sophia Martinez. I'm 32, and last Sunday's family dinner changed everything forever. When my sister Vanessa asked, still using food stamps, in front of everyone, she had no idea my Forbes cover story would hit newsstands the next morning. What started as another humiliating family gathering became the sweetest revenge I never saw coming. The shocked silence that followed still echoes in my mind, but nothing compared to what happened when the magazine dropped. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this incredible journey of family karma, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you've ever dealt with family members who constantly put you down, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Hit that like button if you're ready for some serious justice, and don't forget to subscribe because stories like this don't come around every day. Trust me, you won't believe how this family dinner ends. Growing up as the youngest of 3 girls in the Martinez household meant I was always fighting for recognition. My older sisters, Vanessa and Isabella, seemed to have their lives figured out from day one. Vanessa married her college sweetheart at 24, bought a house in the suburbs, and had 2 perfect children by 30. Isabella became a nurse, steady and reliable, everything my parents admired. Then there was me, the dreamer, the risk-taker, the one who couldn't seem to get it right. After college, I bounced between jobs, trying to find my calling. I worked at a marketing agency for 6 months before getting laid off. Then I tried retail management, lasted 8 months before realizing it wasn't for me. My parents' disappointment was palpable every time I called home with news of another career change. Sophia, when are you going to settle down and be responsible like your sisters? My mother would ask, her voice heavy with concern and judgment. The breaking point came 3 years ago when I decided to start my own tech consultancy business. I had saved up some money and had a solid business plan, but startups are risky, and the first year was brutal. I had to move into a studio apartment, sell my car, and yes, I qualified for food assistance. It wasn't something I was proud of, but it kept me fed while I poured every waking moment into building something meaningful. My family's reaction was swift and merciless. Vanessa would make comments about poor life choices whenever we gathered. Isabella would slip me $20 bills with pitying looks. My parents started introducing me to their friends as still figuring things out. The worst part was the family group chat, where my sisters would share photos of their latest purchases, vacation trips, and achievements while I stayed silent, too embarrassed to contribute. The food stamp comments started during my 2nd year of business building. Vanessa discovered I was using government assistance when she saw me at the grocery store. Instead of asking how I was doing or offering support, she immediately turned it into family gossip. At every gathering, she'd make subtle digs. Oh, are you able to afford the good wine now? Or maybe we should order pizza instead. It's probably more budget-friendly for everyone. Isabella was more passive-aggressive, constantly offering to help out or suggesting I find a stable job with benefits. My parents oscillated between disappointment and worry, never quite sure how to handle their youngest daughter, who seemed so different from their other successful children. The family dynamic became toxic, with every conversation somehow circling back to my financial struggles and unconventional choices. What they didn't see were the 18-hour days I was putting in, the clients I was slowly building, the innovative solutions I was creating for small businesses struggling with digital transformation. My little consultancy was specializing in helping family-owned restaurants and shops establish online presences during the pandemic. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was meaningful, and slowly, very slowly, it was growing. By my 3rd year, I had 15 regular clients and was finally breaking even. I could afford to move into a 1-bedroom apartment and buy groceries without assistance. But the damage to family relationships felt irreversible. Every success felt diminished by years of condescension and doubt. I started avoiding family gatherings, making excuses to skip holidays and birthdays. When I did attend, I kept conversations surface level, sharing nothing about my work or personal life. The irony was that while my family saw failure, I was actually building something revolutionary. My approach to small business digital transformation was getting noticed in professional circles. I'd been invited to speak at 3 conferences, had written articles for industry publications, and was developing proprietary software that streamlined online ordering systems for family restaurants. But to my family, I was still the sister who couldn't get her life together, who had needed food stamps, who didn't drive a nice car or own a house. The emotional toll was devastating. I loved my family, but being around them made me question everything I was working toward. Their success metrics, marriage, homeownership, traditional career paths felt like foreign concepts that I was failing to understand or achieve. I began to internalize their criticism, wondering if I really was just kidding myself about my business prospects. Last month, I received a call that would change everything, but I had no idea at the time. A journalist from Forbes had been tracking my work in the small business sector and wanted to interview me for a feature story about innovative entrepreneurs helping traditional businesses adapt to the digital age. I thought it might be a small mention in a larger piece, nothing major. The interview went well, and I forgot about it in the rush of daily client work and business development. 3 weeks later, the journalist called again. They wanted to do a photo shoot. Still, I didn't think much of it, maybe a small headshot to accompany a brief mention. The photographer arrived at my office, took dozens of shots, and mentioned something about cover consideration, but I assumed that was just standard encouragement. In my family dynamic, I'd learned not to get my hopes up about recognition or success. The invitation to Sunday family dinner arrived via the group chat, as usual. Vanessa was hosting at her pristine suburban home, complete with the perfectly manicured lawn and the kitchen island that could seat 8 people comfortably. These dinners happened monthly, a tradition our mother insisted on to keep the family close, though they often felt more like performance evaluations than celebrations. I debated skipping this one, as I had several others recently. My business was hitting a major milestone. I'd just signed my biggest client yet, a restaurant chain wanting to implement my ordering system across 12 locations. The contract was worth more than I'd made in the previous 2 years combined, but I knew better than to share this news with my family. Their skepticism about my work had trained me to keep achievements private until they were undeniable. The week leading up to dinner was particularly stressful. I was working around the clock to finalize the restaurant chain implementation while simultaneously preparing presentations for 2 potential enterprise clients. My little consultancy was transitioning from scrappy startup to legitimate business, but the growing pains were intense. I was sleeping 4 hours a night and living on coffee and determination. My mother called Tuesday evening, using the tone she reserved for family obligations. "Sophia, you'll be there Sunday, won't you? Vanessa's making her famous lasagna, and Isabella's bringing the kids. We haven't seen you in weeks." The guilt trip was subtle but effective. I knew my absence at the last 2 dinners had been noted and discussed, probably with theories about my latest crisis or phase. Friday afternoon, I received an email that made me pause in the middle of reviewing client proposals. Forbes wanted to schedule a brief call about the article timeline. The journalist mentioned that the piece was performing well in advance reviews and that there might be additional promotional opportunities. I assumed this meant maybe a social media post or 2. My expectations had been so thoroughly managed by years of family disappointment that I couldn't imagine anything truly spectacular happening. The call was brief and professional. The article would publish Monday morning online first, then in the print edition hitting newsstands Tuesday. They asked if I had any major commitments Monday or Tuesday that might conflict with media attention. I laughed, thinking about my schedule of client calls and system updates. Media attention seemed impossibly optimistic for someone whose own family saw her as the perpetual underachiever. Saturday evening, I tried on 3 different outfits for Sunday dinner, settling on something professional but not too flashy. I'd learned that any appearance of success was met with immediate skepticism and interrogation from my family. Better to fly under the radar and hope for a peaceful meal without commentary on my life choices, financial status, or relationship situation. The drive to Vanessa's house took 45 minutes through Sunday morning traffic. I used the time to mentally prepare for the usual dynamics: Vanessa's subtle competitiveness, Isabella's well-meaning but condescending concern, and my parents' disappointment masked as worry. I practiced responses to the inevitable questions about work, keeping busy, dating, focusing on career and plans, taking it one day at a time. Vanessa's house always intimidated me, not because of its size, but because of what it represented. Every surface was perfectly decorated, every room magazine ready. The kitchen smelled like garlic and oregano, and classical music played softly from hidden speakers. This was the life my parents had envisioned for all their daughters: stable, beautiful, predictable. Isabella arrived with her two boys just as I was getting out of my car. Her scrubs were replaced by a flowing sundress, and she looked relaxed in a way that people with steady paychecks and good benefits always seemed to manage. "Sophia, you look thin. Are you eating enough?" The concern was genuine, but felt like a commentary on my lifestyle choices. In our family, being thin meant being stressed, struggling, or both. My parents' car pulled up as we were walking to the front door together. Dad looked distinguished in his weekend polo shirt, and Mom carried a bottle of wine that probably cost more than I typically spent on groceries. They'd both retired comfortably from their government jobs, and their financial security allowed them to be generous with criticism about those still figuring things out. The initial hugs and greetings were warm, but carried undertones of evaluation. "How are you, sweetheart?" from Mom included a visual scan of my outfit, my complexion, my general demeanor. Dad's handshake lingered as if checking for signs of stress or fatigue. Vanessa's hug was brief and performative, already mentally moving on to hostess duties and conversation control. The living room gathering before dinner was always awkward for me. Vanessa would update everyone on her children's achievements, school activities, and her husband's latest promotion. Isabella would share stories from the hospital, funny patient interactions, and her boys' sports schedules. My parents would discuss their retirement activities, volunteer work, and home improvement projects. Then all eyes would turn to me, waiting for updates from the sister who never seemed to have good news to share. "So, Sophia, how's the business going?" Isabella asked with genuine interest, but prepared sympathy. This question had become loaded over the past 3 years. Too much detail, and I'd sound like I was bragging or being unrealistic. Too little, and I'd confirm their suspicions that things weren't going well. I'd perfected a middle ground response that acknowledged progress without triggering either concern or skepticism. "It's growing steadily," I said, which was true but dramatically understated. "I just signed a new client that should keep me busy for the next few months." I didn't mention that this client represented a 300% increase in my typical contract size, or that I'd had to turn down 2 other potential clients due to capacity limitations. Vanessa smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "That's wonderful. Are you finally able to support yourself completely?" The question was phrased as encouragement, but landed like a judgment. The implication was clear. After 3 years, surely I should have achieved basic financial independence. The fact that I had been supporting myself for over a year now seemed irrelevant to the narrative they'd constructed about my perpetual struggle. Dinner preparation became a family affair, with everyone contributing except me. This wasn't intentional exclusion. Vanessa's kitchen was her domain, and she had specific ways she wanted everything done. Isabella helped with salad preparation while Mom set the table with the good china. Dad opened wine and made conversation about the neighborhood, property values, and local politics. I offered to help several times, but was waved away with "everything's under control" and "why don't you just relax?" These responses felt dismissive rather than considerate. The subtext seemed to be that I couldn't be trusted with important tasks or that my contribution wasn't needed. I sat at the breakfast bar, watching my family work together in practiced harmony while feeling like an outsider in my own family. The conversation during meal prep revealed the undercurrents that would soon explode. Vanessa mentioned a coworker's daughter who'd finally gotten a real job with benefits after years of trying to make it as a freelancer. Isabella talked about patients who came to the emergency room because they couldn't afford regular healthcare, shaking her head at the tragedy of financial instability. Mom discussed a news article about the gig economy, leaving people without security or retirement prospects. None of these comments were directed at me specifically, but the message was unmistakable. In their worldview, what I was doing wasn't sustainable, responsible, or wise. They were building a case for traditional employment, stable benefits, and predictable income streams. My unconventional path was seen as a phase that needed to end, not a legitimate career choice that was actually succeeding. The dining room table was set for 6, with Vanessa's husband joining us after finishing some yard work. He was a kind man who stayed mostly quiet during family discussions, but his presence added another layer of conventional success to the gathering. His steady job at an engineering firm, combined with Vanessa's part-time marketing role, had created the comfortable suburban life that represented everything I was supposedly missing. As we took our seats, the seating arrangement told its own story. My parents sat at opposite ends of the table, with Vanessa and her husband on one side, Isabella and me on the other. But the positioning felt symbolic. Everyone else was paired with their success story, while I sat alone, representing the family question mark. The good wine was poured generously, and conversation flowed easily among everyone except me. The lasagna was exceptional, and I said so repeatedly. Food was always a safe topic of conversation, allowing me to contribute positively without triggering discussions about my life choices. Vanessa accepted the compliments graciously, sharing the recipe's history and modifications she'd made over the years. For a few minutes, the atmosphere felt genuinely warm and familial. But comfort never lasted long at these gatherings. As we moved through salad and bread, the conversation inevitably shifted toward updates and future plans. Isabella talked about her hospital's expansion and her opportunity to move into a supervisory role. My parents discussed a cruise they were planning for their anniversary. Vanessa mentioned private school options for her children and summer vacation possibilities. Then came the question I'd been dreading. What about you, Sophia? Any exciting plans coming up? Mom's tone was hopeful, as if maybe this time I'd have news that would reassure her about my life trajectory. The table fell silent, waiting for my response. I could feel the weight of their collective concern and skepticism. I'm pretty focused on work right now, I said carefully. There are some interesting opportunities developing, but nothing I can talk about yet. This was actually the understatement of the century. In addition to the restaurant chain contract, I had preliminary discussions with 2 Fortune 500 companies interested in my small business integration software. But years of family disappointment had taught me to keep expectations low and achievements private until they were undeniable. Vanessa's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Still being mysterious about work, I see. Are you sure everything's okay financially? I mean, it's been a few years since. She didn't finish the sentence, but everyone knew what she meant. Since the food stamps. Since the visible signs of financial struggle. Since I'd become the family charity case. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Isabella shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the loaded nature of the inquiry. Mom reached for her wine glass, preparing for whatever family drama might unfold. Dad cleared his throat, a signal that someone should change the subject. But Vanessa wasn't backing down. She'd been building toward this moment, and the audience was captive. I just think it's time you considered something more stable, she continued, her voice taking on the tone of concerned authority that older siblings often employ. Freelancing and consulting are fine as hobbies, but you need benefits, retirement savings, security. You can't live hand-to-mouth forever, and we worry about you. The "we" was particularly stinging. It implied that my life had been a topic of family discussion, that they'd been analyzing my choices and finding them inadequate. The table remained silent, everyone waiting to see how I'd respond to this public intervention. My phone buzzed in my purse, but I ignored it, focusing on maintaining composure while my sister dismantled my life choices in front of our parents. I appreciate the concern, I said slowly, but I'm doing better than you might think. The business is actually... Sophia, Vanessa interrupted, we love you, but you've been saying the business is growing for 3 years. At some point, you have to face reality. Maybe it's time to update your resume and look for something with actual benefits and job security. The silence that followed Vanessa's interruption was deafening. I felt my cheeks burning with a combination of anger and humiliation. This was exactly why I'd been avoiding family gatherings. No matter what I accomplished, they saw only struggle and failure. My phone buzzed again, more insistently this time, but I was too focused on the hostile energy radiating from across the table. You know what I don't understand? Vanessa continued, apparently interpreting my silence as defeat rather than self-control. How you can be so stubborn about this? Isabella and I have both offered to help you find real jobs. Mom and Dad have been patient, but you're 32 years old. When are you going to stop playing entrepreneur and join the real world? Isabella finally spoke up, her voice gentle, but not exactly supportive. We just want to see you settled and secure, Sophia. There's nothing wrong with wanting stability. Even my ally was hedging, trying to soften Vanessa's blow while fundamentally agreeing with the premise that my choices were questionable. My mother set down her fork carefully, preparing to mediate what was clearly becoming a confrontation. Girls, let's not ruin dinner with. No, Mom. Someone needs to say this. Vanessa interrupted again, her voice gaining confidence. Sophia, are you still using food stamps? Because if you are, this whole successful business owner act needs to stop. We're family. We can help you find something stable instead of watching you struggle and pretend everything's fine. The question hit like a physical blow. Even though I'd been off government assistance for over a year, the public reminder of that period felt designed to maximum humiliation. The way she phrased it, still using food stamps, implied that this was my permanent state, that I was actively deceiving them about my circumstances. But here's what my family didn't know. That morning, I'd received 3 emails that would change everything. Forbes had moved my article to their cover story. The online version was scheduled to go live at midnight Sunday, with social media promotion beginning Monday morning. The print edition would hit newsstands Tuesday with my photo prominently displayed. My phone had been buzzing all day with interview requests from other publications. You know what? Before I tell you how this dinner ends, I have to pause and ask, have you ever been in a situation where your family just couldn't see your worth? Where people who were supposed to support you kept tearing you down? I know so many of you watching have been there. This moment right here, this is where everything changes. But I want you to stick with me because what happens next is going to blow your mind. Actually, Vanessa, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, I haven't used government assistance in over a year. My business is not only supporting me but growing rapidly. I've been trying to share good news, but every time I attempt to talk about work, someone changes the subject or questions whether it's real. Vanessa's expression didn't change. Sophia, saying your business is growing and actually having stable income are 2 different things. We see your apartment, your car, your clothes. If things were really going well, wouldn't there be more obvious signs? This was the trap I'd walked into by keeping my success private. My family had constructed a narrative about my failure based on external markers they could observe. My modest lifestyle, which was actually a choice, I was reinvesting every profit back into business growth, looked like continued struggle to people who measured success by material possessions. What kind of signs would convince you? I asked, genuinely curious about their metrics for success. Did I need a bigger apartment? A newer car? Designer clothes? Their definition of achievement seemed so different from mine that we weren't even having the same conversation. Well, Vanessa said, warming to her topic, for starters, maybe not living in a studio apartment. Maybe having a car that's less than 10 years old. Maybe not looking so stressed all the time. Maybe talking about clients by name instead of being so vague about everything. Isabella nodded reluctantly. It would be nice to hear specifics about what you're actually doing. You're always so secretive about work details. If things were really going well, why not share more? The irony was devastating. I'd been secretive precisely because sharing details led to this kind of interrogation and skepticism. When I'd mentioned early clients, they'd questioned whether small businesses were real clients. When I described my software development, they'd wondered if I was getting paid appropriately for technical work. Their reaction to every piece of information I'd shared had trained me to keep achievements private until they were so obvious that denial was impossible. My phone buzzed again, and this time I glanced at it. The Forbes social media team was asking for approval on promotional posts scheduled for tomorrow morning. The notification preview showed the beginning of a message about cover story feature and Monday morning launch. But my family was so focused on their intervention that they didn't notice my brief distraction. You want specifics? I said, feeling something shift inside me. Fine. Last month, I signed a contract with a restaurant chain for $180,000. This week, I'm presenting to 2 Fortune 500 companies interested in licensing my software. I've been invited to speak at 4 conferences this year, and I just hired my first employee because I can't handle the workload alone. The table fell silent. Vanessa's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Isabella's eyes widened. My parents exchanged glances that suggested they weren't sure whether to believe what they were hearing. Sophia, Mom said carefully, that sounds wonderful, but why haven't you mentioned any of this before? Before I could answer, Vanessa recovered from her shock with characteristic skepticism. Those numbers sound optimistic. Are you sure about the contract amounts? Sometimes these consulting agreements look bigger on paper than they actually are. This was it. The moment when I realized that no amount of success would be enough for some people. Vanessa wasn't questioning my facts because she doubted their accuracy. She was questioning them because accepting them would mean admitting she'd been wrong about me for 3 years. You want proof? I said, reaching for my phone. The Forbes notification was still visible on my lock screen, and suddenly I realized that tomorrow morning's revelation could happen tonight. Actually, let me show you something. But as I unlocked my phone, I hesitated. The Forbes article wasn't supposed to go live until midnight, and it was only 7:30 p.m. Sharing screenshots of private communications with the magazine felt premature and potentially unprofessional. Instead, I opened my business banking app, something I never would have considered showing my family under normal circumstances. Here's last month's revenue, I said, turning the phone toward them. The number on the screen was impossible to argue with. $47,000 in client payments, the largest single month in my business history. And here's this month so far. The partial month was already at $31,000, with the restaurant chain's first payment still pending. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Vanessa stared at the screen, her expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and something that might have been embarrassment. Isabella leaned forward to get a better look, her mouth slightly open. My parents exchanged another glance, this one clearly communicating that they'd significantly underestimated their youngest daughter's situation. That's... Isabella started, then stopped. Sophia, those are really impressive numbers. Why didn't you tell us things were going so well? The question was fair, but the answer was complicated. How do you explain that years of skepticism and condescension had trained you to hide success? That sharing achievements with people who consistently questioned them felt like inviting more criticism rather than celebration? I tried to, I said simply. But every time I mentioned work progress, someone questioned whether it was sustainable or suggested I should find something more stable. After a while, it felt easier to keep things private until they were undeniable. Vanessa was still staring at my phone screen. But if you're making this kind of money, why are you still living in that tiny apartment? Why don't you have a nicer car? Why don't you dress like someone who's successful? This question revealed everything wrong with our family dynamic. Success, in Vanessa's worldview, was primarily about external displays of wealth and status. The idea that someone might prioritize business growth over personal spending, or that someone might define achievement differently than she did, seemed incomprehensible. Because I'm reinvesting profits back into the business, I explained. I'm developing new software, hiring employees, and building something bigger than just personal comfort. The apartment meets my needs, the car runs perfectly, and expensive clothes don't make me better at my job. My phone buzzed again, and this time the notification made my heart skip. Forbes had sent final approval requests for tomorrow's promotional campaign, including social media graphics featuring my photo and the headline "Digital Revolution: How One-Woman Software is Transforming Small Business." The article was scheduled to go live in 4.5 hours. Actually, I said, feeling a surge of confidence I hadn't experienced in years, there's something else you should know. Tomorrow morning, Forbes magazine is publishing a cover story about my work. It's about how my software is helping small businesses adapt to digital commerce, and they're featuring me as one of this year's most innovative entrepreneurs. The statement landed like a bomb in the middle of Vanessa's perfectly decorated dining room. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly, marking seconds that felt like minutes. Vanessa was the first to break the silence. Forbes magazine? Like, the actual Forbes? With the rich people lists and business articles. Yes, the actual Forbes, I confirmed. They've been following my work for several months. The article goes live at midnight tonight, and the print edition hits newsstands Tuesday. They're calling it a cover story, which apparently means my photo will be on the front page. Isabella's expression had shifted completely. The concerned, pitying look was replaced by something approaching awe. Sophia, that's incredible. Forbes doesn't feature just anyone. You must be doing something really special. My mother reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Honey, why didn't you tell us about this earlier? We could have been celebrating instead of. She trailed off, realizing that what they'd been doing was attacking and questioning rather than supporting. But Vanessa wasn't ready to concede defeat. How do we know this is real? I mean, anyone can claim they're going to be in Forbes. Do you have proof that this is actually happening? The question was insulting enough that I almost showed her the email thread with the Forbes team. But something held me back. Maybe the knowledge that tomorrow morning would provide all the proof anyone could want. Instead, I just smiled. You'll see tomorrow, I said. The article goes live at midnight, and they're promoting it heavily on social media starting first thing in the morning. By Tuesday, my face will be on magazine covers in every grocery store and newsstand in the country. Vanessa's husband, who had remained silent throughout this entire exchange, finally spoke up. That's amazing, Sophia. I had no idea you were working on such a large scale. What exactly does your software do? It was a relief to have someone ask about the actual work rather than questioning whether it was real. I spent the next 10 minutes explaining how my platform helped family-owned restaurants integrate online ordering, inventory management, and customer relationship systems. I described the problem I was solving and why it mattered for small businesses competing with major chains. As I talked, I watched my family's expressions change. They were finally understanding that what I'd been building wasn't a hobby or a phase, it was a legitimate business solving real problems for real clients. The work was complex, valuable, and scalable in ways they'd never imagined. So basically, Isabella said slowly, you've created technology that helps small businesses compete with big corporations? And Forbes thinks this is important enough to put you on their cover. Essentially, yes. The article focuses on how independent restaurants are using my platform to level the playing field against major chains. It's part of a larger story about innovation in small business technology. Vanessa had been quiet for several minutes, processing everything she'd heard. Finally, she looked up from her barely touched lasagna. Sophia, I owe you an apology. I had no idea what you were building. When you said you were consulting, I thought you meant something much smaller. The apology hung in the air, sincere but insufficient. 3 years of condescension and doubt couldn't be erased by a single acknowledgement of error. I appreciated Vanessa's willingness to admit she'd been wrong, but the damage to our relationship felt deeper than any one conversation could repair. I understand why you thought that, I said carefully. I wasn't sharing details about the work, so you made assumptions based on what you could see. But those assumptions hurt, Vanessa. The food stamp comments, the questions about whether I could afford things, the suggestions that I should get a real job, all of that made family gatherings feel hostile instead of supportive. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Sweetheart, we never meant to be unsupportive. We were worried about you, and worry sometimes comes out wrong. When you were struggling a few years ago, we just wanted to help, but maybe we didn't know how. This was the conversation we should have had 3 years ago. Instead of asking what I needed or how they could help, my family had imposed their definitions of success and stability on my situation. Their version of helping involved pushing me toward conventional choices rather than supporting my unconventional path. The thing is, I continued, even when I tried to share good news, it was met with skepticism. Remember last year when I mentioned getting invited to speak at a conference? Vanessa asked if they were paying me or if it was just for exposure. When I said I'd signed 3 new clients in 1 month, Isabella asked if they were real businesses or just friends doing me favors. After a while, it felt like nothing I accomplished would ever be good enough. Vanessa winced. I remember saying those things. I thought I was being realistic, helping you see potential problems. But I can see now how it must have sounded like I didn't believe in you. It sounded exactly like that, I confirmed. And after hearing it repeatedly, I started believing maybe you were right. Maybe I was deluding myself about my business prospects. Maybe I should just give up and find something conventional. The doubt you expressed became doubt I carried about my own choices. Isabella reached across the table and squeezed my arm. Sophia, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to make you doubt yourself. Your work sounds amazing, and clearly, I didn't understand the scope of what you were building. Can you forgive us for being small-minded? The question was fair and difficult. Forgiveness felt complicated when the wounds were still fresh and the pattern of behavior had been so consistent. But these were my family members, and despite everything, I love them. The challenge would be rebuilding relationships that had been damaged by years of misunderstanding and judgment. I can forgive, I said, but I need things to be different going forward. I need my choices to be respected, even if they don't look like your choices. I need my successes to be celebrated instead of questioned. And I need the benefit of the doubt when I'm working towards something that might not be immediately visible. My father, who had been listening quietly throughout this entire exchange, cleared his throat. Sophia, you're absolutely right. We owe you better than what we've given you. I'm proud of what you've built, and I'm ashamed that it took a Forbes cover story for us to really listen to what you've been trying to tell us. The acknowledgement meant more coming from Dad because he rarely admitted fault or apologized directly. His generation of men had been trained to project certainty and authority, so this admission of error felt particularly significant. There's something else, I said, feeling like this might be the only opportunity I'd have to address the full scope of the problem. The way you talked about my financial struggles made me feel ashamed of a period when I was actually being resourceful and resilient. Yes, I used food assistance for a few months. Yes, I lived very modestly while building the business. But those weren't signs of failure, they were signs of commitment to something I believed in. Vanessa's face flushed. You're right. I turned your resourcefulness into a character flaw, and that was wrong. I was comparing your situation to mine without understanding that you were playing a completely different game with different rules and different timelines. Exactly, I said. You were measuring my choices against your definitions of success, but we're living completely different lives with different priorities. Your path worked perfectly for you, but it wouldn't work for me, just like my path wouldn't work for you. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with another Forbes notification. This one included a preview of the social media graphics they'd prepared for Monday morning's launch. My professional headshot was paired with pull quotes from the article. Martinez's innovative platform has revolutionized small business digital integration, and from startup to Forbes cover, the American dream realized through technology innovation. I showed the notification to the table, and the reality of tomorrow's revelation finally sank in completely. By morning, everyone they knew would see that the family member they'd been worried about was actually featured on the cover of one of America's most prestigious business magazines. This is incredible, Sophia, Isabella said, studying the preview graphics. I can't wait to see the full article. And I can't wait to tell people at the hospital that my sister is on the cover of Forbes. I'm going to buy 10 copies of the magazine. Vanessa nodded enthusiastically. I want to share this with everyone. Is it okay if I post about it on social media when it goes live? I know I haven't been your biggest supporter, but I want to make up for that now. I'm so proud of you, and I want everyone to know it. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same sister who had questioned my financial stability at the beginning of dinner now wanted to publicly celebrate my success. But her enthusiasm seemed genuine, and I appreciated her willingness to admit she'd been wrong. Of course you can share it, I said. But maybe next time, we could try supporting each other before the world validates our choices? Family should be the first to believe in each other, not the last. My mother was wiping her eyes with her napkin. You're absolutely right, sweetheart. We should have been your biggest cheerleaders all along. I promise things will be different from now on. The dinner continued for another hour, but the entire dynamic had shifted. Instead of feeling like the family failure, I was suddenly the success story everyone wanted to understand better. They asked detailed questions about my work, my plans for expansion, and my experience building a business from scratch. For the first time in 3 years, I felt genuinely heard and respected by my family. As we cleared the table and moved to the living room for coffee, I reflected on how dramatically the evening had changed. What started as another humiliating family dinner had become a moment of vindication and reconnection. The Forbes cover story had given me the credibility my family needed to finally take my work seriously, but more importantly, it had forced us to have conversations we should have been having all along. Vanessa pulled me aside as we were loading the dishwasher. "Sophia, I need you to know how sorry I am. Not just about tonight, but about the past 3 years. I made your struggles about my own discomfort with uncertainty, and that wasn't fair to you. You were brave to take risks and follow your vision, and I should have supported that instead of trying to talk you out of it." Her apology felt complete and genuine. "Thank you for saying that, Vanessa. It means a lot to hear you acknowledge what happened. I know you were trying to help in your own way, but it didn't feel like help on my end." "I can see that now," she said. "I was projecting my own fears about financial security onto your situation. The idea of not having a steady paycheck terrified me, so I couldn't understand how you were managing it. But you were building something amazing while I was telling you to give up and get a regular job." As the evening wound down and we prepared to leave, my father pulled me into a long hug. "I'm proud of you, kiddo. Not just because of Forbes, but because you stuck with your vision when everyone around you was telling you to quit. That takes courage I'm not sure I would have had at your age." The validation felt incredible, but also bittersweet. Why had it taken external recognition for my family to see my worth? Would they have ever acknowledged my success if Forbes hadn't validated it first? These were questions I'd probably spend months processing, but for tonight, I was content to enjoy the feeling of finally being seen and appreciated by the people who mattered most. Monday morning arrived with the kind of anticipation I'd never experienced before. I woke up at 5 a.m., too excited to sleep, and immediately checked my phone. The Forbes article had gone live exactly at midnight, and my notifications were exploding. The online version featured my photo prominently, and the headline read, "Digital Revolution: How Sophia Martinez's Platform is Transforming Small Business Commerce." The article was everything I'd hoped for and more. It detailed my journey from struggling startup founder to innovative entrepreneur, highlighting how my software was helping independent restaurants compete with major chains. The journalist had captured not just the technical aspects of my work, but the mission behind it, empowering small business owners with tools previously available only to large corporations. By 7 a.m., my phone was ringing constantly. Interview requests from business podcasts, speaking invitations from conferences, and inquiries from potential investors filled my inbox. The article was being shared widely on social media, with comments from business leaders and entrepreneurs praising the innovation and impact of my platform. The most satisfying notifications came from my family group chat. Isabella had posted screenshots of the article with heart emojis and pride flags. My mother had shared the Forbes post on her Facebook page with a caption about her brilliant entrepreneur daughter. Even my father, who barely understood social media, had figured out how to share the article on LinkedIn with a post about family pride and business innovation. But the message that meant the most came from Vanessa. She had posted the article on all her social media platforms with a lengthy caption, "I owe my sister Sophia a huge apology." While I was questioning her choices and suggesting she needed a real job, she was busy revolutionizing small business technology and building something incredible. Sometimes the people closest to us are the last to see their brilliance. "I'm so proud of you, Sophia, and sorry it took Forbes to make me realize what I should have known all along." The post had dozens of comments from people who knew our family, congratulating me and praising Vanessa for her honesty about their initial skepticism. Several people mentioned their own experiences with family members not understanding their entrepreneurial journeys, making this feel like a shared story rather than just my personal experience. Tuesday brought even more excitement when the print edition hit newsstands. Seeing my face on the actual Forbes cover in physical form was surreal. I bought 20 copies from different locations, planning to frame one and send others to important clients and mentors who had supported me during the difficult early years. The business impact was immediate and dramatic. 3 Fortune 500 companies reached out about licensing my software. 2 venture capital firms wanted to discuss expansion funding. A major restaurant chain inquired about acquisition possibilities. In less than 48 hours, my little consultancy had transformed from a scrappy startup into a serious player in the business technology sector. the personal impact was equally significant. My relationship with my family had fundamentally shifted overnight. Instead of feeling like the disappointment, I was now the success story they bragged about to their friends. The change was gratifying, but also educational about how external validation can sometimes be necessary to shift entrenched family dynamics. A month later, I signed a licensing deal worth $2.3 million with one of those Fortune 500 companies. I moved into a larger office space and hired 3 full-time employees. My software platform was being implemented by restaurant chains across 12 states, and international expansion opportunities were developing rapidly. The most meaningful change, though, was in my family relationships. We still had monthly dinners at Vanessa's house, but the conversations were completely different. Instead of defending my choices, I was sharing exciting developments and receiving genuine support and enthusiasm. My parents asked thoughtful questions about business strategy and celebrated every milestone. Isabella brought her boys to see my new office and explained to them how their aunt was helping small businesses succeed. Vanessa became one of my strongest advocates, referring potential clients from her marketing network and proudly introducing me as my sister, the Forbes cover entrepreneur, at social events. She seemed genuinely committed to making up for years of skepticism by becoming overly supportive, but I appreciated the effort and the acknowledgement of how much her earlier behavior had impacted me. The food stamp comments never came up again. In fact, our family dynamic had shifted so completely that it felt like those painful dinner conversations had happened to different people. Success had rewritten our family narrative, transforming me from the struggling sister to the innovative entrepreneur everyone wanted to emulate. 6 months after that fateful Sunday dinner, I was invited to speak at a major business conference about entrepreneurship and family dynamics. I talked about the importance of supporting family members who choose unconventional paths, even when their success isn't immediately visible or measurable by traditional standards. The presentation was well received and later turned into a widely shared article about family support systems and entrepreneurial resilience. But here's what I learned through this entire experience. Sometimes the people who love us most can also hurt us most, not through malice, but through their own fears and limited understanding of what success looks like. My family's skepticism came from a place of love and concern, but it manifested as doubt and criticism that nearly derailed my confidence in my own vision. The Forbes cover was wonderful, but it shouldn't have taken external validation for my family to see my worth and potential. Real support means believing in someone before the world does, celebrating their efforts during the struggle, and trusting their judgment about their own life path. I also learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and rebuilding relationships takes time and consistent changed behavior. My family had to earn back my trust by demonstrating that their support wasn't conditional on external recognition. Fortunately, they were willing to do that work, and our relationships are stronger now than they've ever been. Today, my company employs 12 people and serves over 500 small businesses across North America. We're developing new platforms for retail and service businesses, and international expansion is planned for next year. The little consultancy that started in my studio apartment has become a multi-million-dollar enterprise that's genuinely changing how small businesses compete in the digital marketplace. But the success that means the most to me isn't measured in revenue or recognition. It's measured in the relationships I've rebuilt and the family dinners where I now feel celebrated instead of criticized. It's measured in my parents' genuine pride when they talk about my work, and in Isabella's children understanding that success can look many different ways. And yes, it's measured in Vanessa never again asking if I'm still using food stamps, because she finally understands that the sister she was questioning was actually building something extraordinary all along. So here's my question for all of you watching. Have you ever experienced that sweet moment when karma finally came full circle? When the people who doubted you had to eat their words? I want to hear your stories in the comments below because I know I'm not the only one who's been through something like this. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because I love sharing these real-life drama stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction. Don't forget to share this video with anyone who's ever been the underestimated family member, because sometimes we all need a reminder that vindication is possible. From my heart to yours, thank you for listening to my story and being part of this incredible community. I hope this reminds you that your current struggles might just be the foundation of your future success story. Sometimes the people who doubt you most will become your biggest cheerleaders. You just have to be patient enough for karma to work its magic. Keep believing in yourselves, keep building your dreams, and remember that family support is wonderful, but self-belief is essential. Until next time, this is Sophia, reminding you that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding beyond everyone's wildest expectations.